Senators Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy introduced their legislation and their version of repeal and replace.
Senator Sanders unveils his 2017 Medicare for All bill with the backing of quite a few Democrats.
And the former political director of Bros4Hillary and Huffington Post contributor Alex Mohajer joins us to discuss what happened. It's Tuesday, all that and more. Welcome to the Political Beat.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hey guys, welcome to AfterBuzz TV's The Political Beat, the millennial show and podcast. Breaking down the latest in Washington politics and news from around the country and the world. I'm your host in our brand new studio, Drexel Hurd. You can find me on Twitter at Drexel Hurd.
And me at Chelsea Galicia, and the show at Political Beat TV.
Some housekeeping items. Next week, former Obama White House digital director and executive director of Run for Something, an organization that we talked about last week that we're joining forces with, Amanda Littman. She's going to join us to discuss the organization and their plans on getting millennials elected across the country. So let's get to the show. In the first beat, we'll give you a rundown of the day's top headlines, followed by this week's interview with Alex Mohajer.
And then in our section we called in the breakdown, we're going to give you a crash course on what all these medical terms mean. Medicare for all, universal, single payer. What does all this mean? We're going to fill you in that section.
And then in the spotlight, we'll highlight the Obama Foundation's new opportunities for millennials like us, followed by our final thoughts in the final beat. So Chelsea, what's been happening in the world today?
Well, today Donald Trump made his grand appearance at the UN, an organization that he called weak and useless during his campaign. And today he did not, I was going to say did not disappoint, but I guess I didn't have any other expectations, so he didn't disappoint. But he, was really aggressive, saying that North Korea may need to be totally destroyed, saying that Kim Jong-un is a rocket man on a suicide mission, just railing against rogue regimes and calling people or countries murderous regimes. It was just everything you wouldn't want to see when you're hoping for peace around the world.
Even though he used the term peace during that speech, it was a little weird. What surprised me the most was Benjamin Netanyahu, who I'm not a big fan of. I don't think Barack Obama was a big fan of. Actually, I don't think many presidents. I don't even think George Bush was a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. Called it one of the most courageous speeches in the 30 years of his experience with the United Nations. That says a lot about Benjamin Netanyahu.
But I did like President Emmanuel Macron from France, who said that we don't need walls. What we need is action. A slight dig, clearly, to Trump.
Yeah, and it was his first one. But speaking of action, the FBI has been doing some action. Has had some action lately.
I love it.
Paul Manafort set to be indicted by special counsel. A surprise to him. And a delight to all of us.
Yes.
The surprise and delight for Paul Manafort. He was allegedly told by the special counsel's office that he will be indicted, although no word on what the actual charges are yet. Apparently, this, according to CNN, this investigation just came out. According to the CNN, the investigation reaches back 11 years.
Wait,
that's about how far the special counsel is looking back into Paul Manafort.
Wow.
11 years. So
they successfully got a FISA order to be able to wiretap him from the moment that he got onto the campaign and then after. So I would imagine.
But apparently they've been looking at him before the campaign. This is not even because he got on the campaign. This is before the campaign.
So they were investigating him, but the wiretapping began when he got on the campaign.
Yes.
That's what I understand. So I cannot wait till we hear those tapes. I mean, tapes. I just sounded like the Nixon era.
Right.
The audio, we'll just call it that.
The other crazy thing the part of the story that I like is the fact that the FBI got an order. They were able to pick the locks on Paul Manafort's home to get into his house. And Paul Manafort was asleep in his room. They knocked on his bedroom door. That's how he found out they were in his house. That is some movie
scary.
shit.
That is scarier than the earthquake we had last night.
Oh my God, which I did not know. I am suspecting that the next couple of indictments are going to start with General Flynn. I think he's going to be next on the list. So we'll be kind of monitoring that over the next few weeks.
And then chanting, lock him up.
And then chanting, lock him up. But
No, actually, we will not. We will keep it classy.
yeah, we'll just
But we'll be
chant,
thinking that.
put him away.
Much better.
Much better, much better. So check out those headlines and more. You can follow Chelsea and I on Twitter because we are definitely always retweeting some things about things that are happening around the world. But
I'm always retweeting
a person
Drexel.
that we do not want to lock up. Post 2016 election books are continuing to hit the bookshelves, but none more anticipated than Hillary Clinton's take on the election in her new best-selling book. Number like
Did she pay
5
you
or
to
6.
do this? Look at you holding the book up.
What happened? I'm still getting yes.
How
No,
far did you get in the book?
I'm not that. I'm pretty far in the book. I'm like
That mean-
halfway through the book. I've read enough to form an opinion on what and we'll discuss it here in a second. But here to discuss the book and their opinion on it is the former political director of Bros for Hillary and the founder of Bros for America. He's a Huffington Post contributor. Welcome back to the show, Alex Mohajer.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time. He was
It's
on
been a while.
Political Culture when we were Political Culture, back when it was a whole panel show. So
Right before the inauguration.
yes, thanks
Those were the
for-
days.
Those were the days back when we weren't talking about destroying North Korea. Yeah. So let's just let's go back to the election a bit.
Yeah.
So you were at the Jacob Javits Center the night of the election.
Oh, we're going to go there.
Yeah, we're just
Does everybody ask?
Right. In your recent column in the Huffington Post, "Why Hillary Lost: The Great American Lie," discusses some of that night. What was that night like for you?
So, I mean, it remains an extremely painful memory because we had spent about 2 years, you recall, because you were
Right.
at all our events, but we spent about 2 years working to elect her, and we did not foresee a loss. I mean, we were so sure that we had won this thing. So we were like literally prancing around New York City the day of. We were like making phone calls to, like last second phone banking calls and literally, Madam President, running around taking pictures. We're so excited, and the energy was just so palpable. And as the night started to filter on, I remember looking over at my colleague Rance
right.
Collins, who you know, and just sort of processing what this was going to mean. And that night, I remember I cursed America. I was like, I'll never forgive America for
Right.
this, because I was in sort of shock. And I think what we have seen is that there's a very widespread grieving process going on right now. So it was a tough night, and it was the beginning of, something else, like for me, which was my journalism, because that night basically inspired my journalism. So everything that I've done for HuffPost and elsewhere has been basically inspired by that night. So
Right, which it's so interesting because not only did it inspire you to get into journalism, Amanda Littman, who's on next week, it inspired that organization to start and run for something, and a lot of organizations. A guest that we're going to have on in a couple of weeks, Marty Cummings, who kind of created Hell's Kitchen Democrats, has now wiped out the the political dynasty in Hell's Kitchen. So like we're starting to see a little bit of that. But I haven't really finished the book yet. So what I've read is like the most honest, open, raw that I think we've probably ever seen Hillary Clinton. Now that she's not running for anything, or at least about to run for something. What was your initial reaction to the book, and what were some of your favorite moments?
my initial reaction was good. I think there's it's just an asinine pressure for her to shut up. Have you seen these editorials that
yes.
are literally titled "Hillary couldn't shut up, go away"? And I'm like, what are you talking? She's the first female major party nominee for president of the United States and won more votes than any other white man in history. So she deserves to have her say. But, the themes that she's talking about in the book are not surprising. They're not new. It's just from her mouth. And I think that's, it was very refreshing and what we needed to hear, because but for the Russian interventionism, but for James Comey's letter to Congress, she would be president today. We know that. We know that because it's been proven. There's loads of evidence to support those facts. So hearing it from her is nice. It's nice. And you're right. She's very candid in the book, talking about laying down the night of the election next to Bill and holding his hand. And I just thought that was very human. And we're getting to see a side of her that I think people, maligned her for, like not being more, I guess, personable or whatever it was.
One of the favorite parts, or I might probably be done all over the book, is where she places blame. Some of which was on herself, but I haven't heard many media outlets covering the fact that she did take responsibility for a few decisions, like the email server. She called it a bonehead decision and things like that. What did you think of where she placed blame? I mean, it was from Obama and Biden to apathetic women.
Yeah, I mean, she's right on the money. You know, she's had more women, I guess, who were galvanized by her loss than they were by her candidacy, which I think is very, it's a good thing. But she talks about in the book, and then I think she talks about in her interviews, how women would come up to her crying after the election, seeking absolution, and they'd be like, I didn't vote, and I'm so sorry I didn't vote, and she'd be like, it's really hard for me to comfort you right now, because there is no absolution. So it's hard for me too to forgive people who were non-voters or who voted third party out of some...
Right. Yeah. She lays blame on Jill Stein that there were enough voters who voted for her. Had they voted for Hillary, things would be different. This is a Nader situation 2.0.
The exact number of votes that Donald Trump won in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania were the number of votes that Jill Stein earned that covered the margins.
It's painful.
Right? So, yeah,
it's
exact.
And in that sense, like, I don't want people to think that, like, I'm a huge proponent, and I've talked about a lot on the show, of allowing other parties to be formed to have that message out, to get their message out. On the flip side of that, we talk about it a lot, which is the system, the electoral college system, does not allow for other parties to be a part of the electoral process, because you do essentially take things away from the rightful, in this case, popular vote winner.
I kind of think that Hillary's cause is going to be get rid of the electoral college.
And that's going to be my
cause. Which she talked about. Which she talked about in the last couple of days. Which was
it must go.
Reform
the electoral college system must go. It is not representative. It's no longer fair. It is based on an arcane system of allocating votes that's so backwards. It's like 4 times. A voter in Wyoming gets 4 times the voting strength as a voter in New York, based on the fact that in the 1700s there was a 95% rural area in the country. Now we've got less than 20% rural areas, and yet those rural voters are still given disproportionate strength.
So my favorite part of her taking responsibility is I didn't connect with the anger. I didn't understand what was going on. She basically says, I didn't get it.
No, wait, whoa. Well, that's not what she said.
Well, okay, so then tell me what she said, because that's what
right. So reading the book is very different than, and Alex, I'm sure you're going to say this, but it's very different than what the press has kind of said. She said, I understood it. I just could not be that person to get angry about it. That's not my personality. She said, I am not that person to get angry. I'm not that person to be out there and doing it.
I heard it.
I do think she says that she didn't. She underestimated the. It's like a little bit of both of you are saying, but she underestimated the white nationalist anger that had been boiling, and actually, so had all of us. I don't think I really realized it until after the election either. Right. So when we're seeing these white nationalist rallies, I'm kind of like, when the hell did this happen?
Right. Well, not the white nationalist part, but the uprising, the anger of Middle America was not a surprise really to Bernie supporters. I know that that's a bad word in your language, basically. So I don't want to get your heart rate up too much. But that's what the Bernie, surprise turnout was all about, was that he was speaking to Middle America.
They both did. I mean, both Trump and there we go. Both Trump and Sanders appealed to a very angry, sort of disenfranchised base. And Donald Trump used a lot of the rhetoric that Bernie Sanders used in the primary.
Like I've always said, birds of a feather. Drexel,
we're going to keep it classy and we're going to keep it honest here.
That's about as honest as I can get. That's about as honest as I can get. But I've said that consistently, significantly on this show.
I agree.
It may be maybe your truth, but it is not the truth.
You know what this interesting is? I'm a progressive, right? I protested the Iraq War. I protested Prop 8. I was like almost arrested for these things. I was with the Occupy Wall Street movement. I was like out there in the streets, but I voted for Hillary Clinton, and now the Bernie Sanders people, they say I'm a centrist corporatist shill, like I'm bought out by the banks. I I literally protested these things before these guys ever were even involved in politics.
I protested money in politics, got arrested for it.
Yeah.
And I still voted for her.
Yeah.
So I want to. So just to get back to the book, a little bit,
So
'cause we
you're one of
talked
the good
about
ones. You're one of the good ones.
Yeah.
Those never Hillary folks were looking. I'm looking at you. Never Hillary.
we talked about where she kind of laid the blame in the book, but I do want to go back to where she said about her personal decisions that she and the campaign made that contributed to her loss. Were there areas in the book that you agreed with her in terms of how Robbie Mook did, how she made those decisions, and what the campaign didn't take advantage of?
I think if she had won, which was she was supposed to, which I believe that she did, but that's another show. I think that we wouldn't be having that conversation.
Right.
You know, we'd be talking about what an excellently coordinated campaign it was. It was such a clean campaign. It was such beautiful themes and so well executed and so well staffed, yada, yada. Now we're having to have that retrospective because of the loss. And in my opinion, the loss was because of intervening forces. So
Did she name any, because I really don't know, and you guys have read the book, or at least half. Were there any silver linings that she identified?
There were. I think that part of the, at least in my opinion, as far as so much that I've read and so much that I've read about the book, there's people that have said out there, what are the takeaways and what does she contribute to the conversation after that? And I think what Hillary Clinton talks about in the book and what she's talked about at least in her press tour is, I don't want the next candidate to go through this. Here are the things that I went through that the next candidate should be prepared for, that America should be prepared for. You know, I was reading an article today that said Democratic candidates are locking down their campaigns from a technical standpoint to make sure they don't get hacked as they go into the next election.
They're doing it right now.
Let's make sure, these are the things that Hillary Clinton went through. We've learned through these mistakes. Let's do this. And let's not make those mistakes again. Let's not get into the misogynistic rhetoric that I went through. Here's how that rhetoric will affect some of our candidates going forward: the Kamala Harris's, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Kirsten Gillibrand, and all those people. And these are what those women will go through. And for any female candidate, not just presidential candidate, here is what every female candidate will have to go through along their way. And here's what I went through. Here's what they have to go through.
I think it's about women candidates. Right. It was also, I think, about our democracy. It's basically saying, you know, these are our free and fair elections, and if we don't protect our most core democratic institutions, what are we? We are no better than than Russia, you know, or some of those. Yeah, I said Russia, Vladimir. So I think it's the core takeaway, and I think something that we should all be very alarmed about, because if we do not get to control our elections in this country, it is the end of our democracy, and that's very dire. I think it's more dire than people are really giving.
The voter suppression thing is unbelievably damaging.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think and I think Hillary brings that up in the book as well. She talks about, you know, voter suppression in general. And you're seeing that in Chris Kobach's commission, and you're seeing that. And I think that people really have to, if you take away anything from this conversation, you take away anything in the book, even if you didn't read it, if you've seen Hillary's press tour, if you take away anything, it goes back to what Alex was saying, which is democracy. Our democracy is under attack.
Yeah.
And
it's really not about Hillary Clinton anymore.
Right.
You know.
And has been under attack ever since Republicans went after voting rights and continue on this path of voter suppression. But
what was really quick, what interesting, I didn't think she would take any jabs at President Obama, and she kind of did, for not having some, you know, much bigger deal press conference where he talked about Russian interference and said that, you know, there is a war against our democracy that we.
Yeah. He was passive. He was a little bit pacifist about it because he didn't want to be viewed as partisan.
Right.
And I remember being angry about that back in November, December, those first couple months, because I don't remember really them talking about it a lot. Like my personal memory, as I try to re-jog it, I don't really remember them talking about it a lot. I remember them bringing it up kind of sort of like, oh yeah, the Russian intervention. But then you look back at footage of her in the debates, and she's talking about it. She's talking about it very seriously. She's driving it home, and it's still, I think, even for people that agreed with her, didn't really register. I don't know why we didn't register this.
Because at that point, she was getting intelligence briefings. She was she at least had gotten a couple of intelligence briefings on the presidential level at that point. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens over the next few years.
Is there a chapter called "What Happens Next"? It should have been.
Well,
You should have asked me about
Did
that.
you guys see this in The Hill last night?
that?
Is that she said to a Hill reporter she reserves the right to contest the outcome of the 2016 election.
No.
She just merely it went viral all day today. But I thought that was very interesting because I have called for her to do that.
There is a whole there is a whole section on frustration, and one of the chapters in that section is called "Why," and so yeah, Alex, thanks for coming on the show, man.
It's already over.
It's that's how TV works. It's so fast here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on. Be sure. Where can they find you on Twitter?
At Alex Mohajer or at Bros4America. The number
They
4.
both have blue checks, by the way. I'm still trying to work on mine. Be sure to grab your copy of What Happened or listen to the audio version narrated by Hillary Clinton. Thanks, Alex, for coming into the studio today.
Now
So
the breakdown.
now we're getting into something that is not equally as important. This is actually really important. So this week, each week, like we always say in the breakdown, we'll talk about some policy or political situation and try to bring some clarity to it.
And this week, the Republicans repeal and replace plan.
Republicans.
I want to call it like 4.0 at this point. I don't know how many attempts this is, but this is a Graham Cassidy bill that basically is being said it's worse than the other bills that have come before it. The major difference with the other bills is that this one starts this grant block or block grant, or I can't even remember. But basically they just give the states a chunk of money and let the states do whatever they want with it. Make up their own rules, apply it however they want. They can, deny pre-existing conditions. They can really do anything. So really, in this bill, the federal government is just punting it to all the states.
Right. And one of the things that we talked about before the show that people should really be alarmed about, especially in states like California, Alaska, Arizona, some of these states that are going to be hit by this bill. And I think I think we're going to pull up a chart or just kind of like a whole rundown of things that this bill kind of affects. And one of those things is, like you said, pulling money from states that have
Come to
rely on Medicare a lot and expanded their programs. And Bill Cassidy said in an interview, what about these? He said it was not fair that those states were getting that funding. But I'm like, those states didn't ask for that funding. Had they asked when President Obama said from the beginning, ask the federal government for this money, they would have gotten that money. And it's so crazy because he's from Louisiana. Oh, is he from Louisiana? Bill Cassidy's from, wait, no, he's not from Louisiana. He is from...
Louisiana.
He's from Louisiana. Louisiana's healthcare, they have their constituents rely so much on federal government money that it's crazy to me that people in Louisiana are allowing this to happen. It is, to me, a dereliction of duty to the constituents of Louisiana for Bill Cassidy as the United States Senator to be bringing up a bill like this. I'd be interested to see what the Democratic governor has to say about that. And because I don't think we haven't heard anything from him.
So this is a scary idea, but do you think it's going to go through? I mean, they're up against this deadline. What is this deadline, this September 30th deadline about?
So after a certain period of time, the Senate rules require, right now, between a period of reconciliation or after reconciliation, they have to get, between now and September 30th, the Senate rules only require them to have 50 votes to pass major legislation. After September 30th, they have to get 60 votes to hit that. They know that there are not 60 votes out there for anything.
So they got to hurry up and do something.
So they got to hurry up and push it through. But this goes back to something that John McCain was talking about when he first gave his little dramatic thumbs down, which was, it was pretty dramatic, which was, for those listening, I just kind of gave the thumbs down, that this is not regular order. Like, this is not the way that the Senate is supposed to work. The Senate is supposed to every senator is supposed to allow time on the floor. Every senator is supposed to allow time to put amendments. Every senator is supposed to allow time, or every senator is supposed to get time to read the bill. The other point of that is, according to Senate rules as they stand right now, there's only a minute, there's only 90 seconds of allowable debate left in this current term. 90 seconds left of debate in this term before the end of the term.
Ooh, I see that this upsets you.
I mean, it's crazy, but 90 seconds is nothing.
Right.
90 seconds is, you know what I mean? It's a thumb down from John McCain.
Right.
It's how long it took him to walk that floor and do that. So, you know, with everything going on, I think it's important for us to take some time to kind of break down healthcare just for the next few minutes. Because Chelsea and I, we kind of recognize that healthcare is really complicated. And I know a lot of people think that, you know, some of these grand gestures are easy. Donald Trump did it. He said that going into this, going into negotiating would be easy for him. And then eventually, after the election, was like, this is pretty complicated.
Who knew
Healthcare
could be
was
so
complicated.
complicated?
It's messy, complicated, and we understand how important it is to understand at least the basics of some of the systems and around the politics of that.
The lingo.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of these these different types of systems that we have.
Yes.
The one that everybody has.
Most
everybody.
80%. So this is employer-based healthcare. 80% of Americans have it. Basically, your employer pays for it, although you end up paying for part of it. Something I don't understand, and maybe you can tell me. When I had an employer-based healthcare, I didn't really like it. I still think it was not that, I mean, it was good, but not that great. I can't imagine if I had needed prescriptions or surgeries or all that it would have been that great. So I don't understand why so many people like their current plan. But apparently that's what the deal is.
80% of Americans have employer-based healthcare. I have my healthcare through my employer, or at least I've had for the past two companies that I've worked with. I don't like, so I have an HMO, which is a health maintenance organization through Kaiser Permanente. Blue Cross Blue Shield is an HMO.
Well, they offer both HMOs
and PPO.
PPOs. Yeah.
PPO preferred provider organization, which is managed by healthcare doctor professionals, basically. And it's
like
fine. It's fine. But I also look at HMOs like I look at a system, a government-run system, because with Kaiser, you go in, you choose your doctor, but that does not mean that doctor, that the wait time to see that doctor, like sometimes I'm like, oh, I need something, whatever, and it takes me a month to get in to see my doctor. So I think
they say the Canadians wait too long.
Right, but that goes into an argument that I think a lot of people are either going to have to come to terms with as we get into Medicare, Medicaid, public option, single payer, and stuff like that, which is the wait time on that. Even if you have healthcare through your employer, those that do have it are still having to wait X amount of time just to get that, and that's what you're going to get on the other side and you look at the wait times for in Canada, and you get the wait times in Europe and other places that have universal health care. Those are some of the complaints that people hear, and this is not employer-based healthcare is not immune from that wait time as much as people think it is,
and not death panels either.
Not death panels.
Insurance companies are still deciding what treatment they approve. And it's not even a panel. It's like one person that's like, this is too expensive.
Right.
Nope.
Right. It's Sheila in insurance. Let's talk briefly about Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare, for those that don't know, is a federal program that provides health coverage if you are 65 or older or have a severe disability, no matter your income, which is similar to what Medicare is the current single payer system in the country. Medicaid is a state and federal program that provides health coverage if you have very low income.
And Californians may not recognize Medicaid because we call it Medi-Cal here.
Medi-Cal here. Couple other systems that you guys might have heard. Obviously, we talked about universal health care. Provides health care and financial protection to all citizens. A situation where citizens can access health services without incurring financial hardships. That's Canada, Europe, most industrialized countries around the world have universal health care for their citizens.
It's not single payer.
It's not single payer, because what is single payer?
The government pays, but who's paying for universal?
It is a health care system financed by taxes, single payer, that covers the cost of essential health care for all residents.
And who pays for universal health care, if not taxes? And it's not burdensome to the citizens. This is why I don't completely understand this.
That's a good question. Somebody might know that better.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll look at that. I'll have to think about that. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Well, thank
But
you.
I just know their systems are a little bit different.
All
But
right.
there is a different, and I know smarter people will know that. But just a brief history of healthcare in America, real quick. So the single-payer legislation has been brought up every year in the House by Michigan Congressman John Conyers since 2004. Bernie Sanders introduced single-payer legislation originally in 2013. Didn't have any Democratic backers. Now has 16 to 18 co-sponsors, Democratic co-sponsors. In reality, what I want people to kind of understand about those 16 people, 18 people, whatever. There are a few Democrats who had been interested in single payer who've been kind of fighting for universal health care for probably years. The other side of that are the Kirsten Gillibrands, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, the 2020 slate for Democrats. If you people do not understand the political makeup of that piece. Like, you're looking at these four people who are very interested in running for president. What do you do if you're running for president? You latch on to the most popular thing that you think that your constituents are very interested
Are
in.
you
or
saying they
energized.
don't believe in it?
I'm not saying they don't believe in it. I'm saying you have to be you can't look at it like, oh my God, they believe in it, without thinking those people are the names that are people that are running for president. Why would they do it now as opposed to 2013 when some of them had a chance? Kamala Harris, a little bit different because she just got elected. Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, all those people weren't signed on in 2013. So I think that Elizabeth Warren was elected.
This really only became a thing during the campaign when Bernie brought it up.
But this wasn't a thing. Bernie, like I just said, John Conyers had been bringing it up since 2014.
But Americans were not talking about it in great numbers until the campaign.
And I was reading, Axios had a whole article about where Democrats lie in terms of polling right now. Healthcare ranks up there with something that is very important. You know what did not rank that well? Free college. Some of those free programs, Democrats aren't very interested in at this point.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of people feel left out if they've already gone through college and stuff like that. They don't want to have to pay for somebody that's already done.
Resentful.
But that's a whole nother conversation.
You know something I heard at Politicon? I don't know if this is one where we were both in the room, but somebody said, I don't believe in free college. I believe in work for a year to pay for college, like work for the public good. So something like, I don't know what they would have people do, but it's where you would have to put in work that benefits the country, not just military service.
Yeah. And I think, I know that's come up several times with several different Democrats over the years, and I'm all for that. I'm all for public service through college access. Just some quick effects on the industry, because we talk about effects on people who are benefiting from single payer and the Sanders Medicare for All bill. One of the things that really I know stuck out to you, Chelsea, was the fact that the Sanders legislation includes reproductive rights, which has never happened before. Something that I know that once it gets to the floor, it's never going to get to the floor. Once it gets to committee, and that's another thing that people have to realize, is that this is not a bit, people think that because this has traction with Democrats, that it's going to make it to the floor of the United States Senate. And I think people have to come to the grips that that's not how the Senate works. The Senate, you got to get through the committee. If you watch Schoolhouse Rock, got to go through committee. Then you got to get to the floor. But this is a bill that the Health and Human Services Committee is never going to allow to bring to a vote. And
Before, when we talked about this, you were kind of just annoyed that he had introduced the bill.
I don't think that I was annoyed at the bill so much as I was annoyed at the idea that people thought that this was and even Donald Trump thought this was a thing, that
It could pass.
That it could pass,
And he was going to veto it.
Right, but and I said this to you on the phone the other day, which is, if Donald Trump thinks it's going to pass, then there are swaths of people that think it's going to make its way through regular order, and that's just not reality.
Okay, the other thing.
And I said, I'm just annoyed that we got to get back to the honest conversation. We got to get back to the putting legislation forth like this. That's bold legislation, but being honest about the process and really telling people this is how long it's going to take us to get through this. And if you don't vote, you're never going to get what you need. And you got to make sure that the right people are in the right place at the right time for that to happen. If not, one United States senator can hold up an entire bill in the United States Senate. That is how the process works. And I think people have to be honest conversation. I would much rather Bernie say, here's my legislation, here's how hard it's going to be. and be honest with people. And I would have been like, yeah, Bernie, you got that.
Did you watch the press conference where he announced? He talked about the bill. He had a doctor speak.
Yeah,
a nurse speak,
I'm talking about process. I'm not talking about all these like this grandstanding people.
But
standing
first,
around
you got
talking.
to got to create the will in the American
Yes,
people, because first it's a will and then there's a way.
Yes, but I also want people to realize that a will isn't stopping the 50 senators from bringing up the Graham Cassidy. Like that's just how the Senate works. The Senate is a whole. I'm sweating like it's nobody's business. It has a whole set of rules that people just really have to understand.
I still think it's a great thing that
really
was announced.
And I think it's great that it was announced. I think that it's obviously going to shift the conversation in a direction that we want it to go in.
And I cannot wait for that conversation where we start talking about how we think this could be paid for. I mean, he lays out some ideas for it, and I have my own ideas.
We talked about it the other day when we talked about taxing wealth earned or
I'm thinking more about taxing junk food, because that's
don't bring that up.
That's what costs us so much.
It's true.
And the farm bill, the subsidies, we could save a lot of money, but that's going to be hard to pull off because that impacts Iowa, and who can dare lose support in Iowa?
I mean, remember when they brought the soda tax up, like how controversial that was. So I don't know if yes, we should be taxing junk food, but that caused more problems for certain people than it really should have. But what should cause problems are the calls that people should be making to their senators within the next 10 days. Like, I know we're talking about Medicare for all right now, but what's really most important right now is the Graham Cassidy bill, and making sure that the senators, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, all those people stick to their guns, because they are like one vote shy of hitting that 50 votes. Yeah. So get out there and do that. One thing that I want to make sure that we get to before we hit the road here is something that I actually applied for last week. The Obama Foundation has made a couple of big announcements for millennials around the country, starting with a fellowship which seeks to support outstanding civic innovators from around the world.
I have no idea what that means. I hope you do.
Civic innovators, innovative people who want to be engaged in their government.
This is the exact kind of language that costs the Democrats.
Oh my goodness. Should we dumb down America for people who don't understand what civic innovator is?
It's not that it's dumbing down. It's that, like, what does that look like? Does that look like people who are active in their communities, who are organizing, or is that protesters?
You know who did that? Hillary Clinton. Every bullet point on her website, HillaryClinton.com, that tells you everything about those, and then nobody read any of that. So even if you explain to people, nobody's going to read it. So you just start making up words.
Because people like video, so you got to talk about it.
I guess we're going to have to do it on video. I mean, I guess we're going to have to have 30-second Snapchat videos for people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. And then, of course, the Obama Foundation Summit, which will welcome civic leaders from around the United States and the world for a 2-day immersive event in Chicago. So check those out on Obama.org. President Obama does a really great video there, and it's a lot of fun.
I hope you get picked.
I hope so too. I want to go, and then I'll do a whole show from Chicago.
Did they say how many people they'll accept?
They did not. But I definitely want to be one of them. You should too.
I don't think they're not going to pick me.
You'd be great.
Why
You'd be
would
great.
they pick me?
Yeah, as always, we love listener feedback, so continue to leave your comments and thoughts on the show, or anything you heard today via Twitter. I know, so if people have conversation or thoughts on universal health care and single payer, definitely leave your comments in the chat room below.
Or you can chase us down the studio over to the Trump Report,
right.
Where we interact live with the audience.
Don't forget to check out Fear the Walking Dead after show on Thursday or on Sundays, and all the rest of it, and AfterBuzz Weekly on Fridays. Be sure to follow AfterBuzz TV at AfterBuzz TV. Follow me on Twitter at Drexel Hurd.
And me at Chelsea Galicia.
And thanks to Alex Mohajer. And this week, and we'll see Amanda Littman next week. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye now.
See you now.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.